In today's video, I am reviewing the Fleet clothing line. Now, some of these garments I've used longer than others. For example, this alpaca merino blend, I've used this since I think 2018, even like back to the Public Land Challenge. I was wearing this particular base layer as kind of my only garment. And then since then, I've acquired some of these other things. The Phantom soft shell set I've had since early spring of 2019. And then the Tailwind puffy jacket, as well as the Mad Trapper vest, I've had since last fall, like mid to late season. I started to wear those and started to get some use in them. I'm just gonna kind of dive into these particular things, but Fleet does have a lot more items that they offer, so I'll have a link to their website. As far as the base layer goes, the idea and the concept behind the alpaca blend is that in comparison to merino, the alpaca has more of a hollow fiber, so in theory it should be warmer. It should potentially wick moisture a little bit better. Merino, of course, although it retains its heat while wet, it does hold on to moisture as opposed to synthetics that would more push that moisture through, hydrophobic versus hydrophilic. With the alpaca, it's supposed to be slightly more moisture wicking than the merino. In practice, it's hard for me to quantitatively say one way or the other because I'm not wearing half of my body with alpaca and the other half with merino to be able to say like, oh yeah, my left side's a little bit warmer. But I do think that it's a nice garment. I have heard from some people that the alpaca they think is a little bit itchy. For me, I can't say that I've noticed it. I can't say it's been an issue for me. Although I will also add that typically it's not my very next to skin layer, at least not on the chest. Usually, especially when it gets colder, I'll have like a heated vest that's like a synthetic next to skin, and then I'll have this right on over the top like I talked about in my last video. So now we'll move on to the Phantom set. As I hope you guys can hear, or maybe rather not hear in the video, it is a pretty quiet fabric. It's quieter than, say, the puffy jacket material, not as quiet as, say, a really high loft fleece. I mean, nothing's as quiet as that, but no concerns at all with bow hunting noise related to this jacket in particular, or the pants. Being a soft shell, it is moisture resistant, windproof. Now, if you go on their website, they don't mention like a specific trade name for a certain like wind blocking laminate, but they do post the tested values in terms of like the CFM of the garment, which kind of tells you how windproof it should be. And I've taken these things and used them in conjunction with other layers that were, say, cotton, that the wind's gonna blow right through, and used them in cold, windy weather to kind of compare, how windproof is it? And I mean, to the best of my knowledge, with 20, 30 mile an hour winds, I can't tell that the wind's getting through it all. So on the inside of the jacket, you can see that it has this nice little fleece backer, and in other areas it has a ripstop. For pockets, you got the two side pockets. You also have two zippered chest pockets, one on each side. And then you also have pit zips. And where these pit zips really come in handy is when you're walking into the woods. I mean, the concept behind this layering system is that if you don't have to pack in your layers and get dressed at the base of the tree, then you shouldn't have to. So especially in kind of like maybe milder climates or just kind of mid-range in the season, you should be able to take a jacket like this over your base layers, maybe have it unzipped, have the pit zips open, and then just be able to walk in. Once you get to stand, zip everything back up, and then be able to hunt. Thing to remember too with shell garments in general, if something is windproof or like with rain gear, if something is waterproof, you can try and make it as breathable as possible, but it's still not gonna ever be as breathable as something like a merino wool or a cotton or something like that. So having these pit zips for just some extra ventilation while wearing this is a nice offering to have. The other thing I found with the pit zips is that if you have them open, you can actually stick your hands through from the outside and be able to stick them into your interior pockets. For the Phantom pants, essentially you got pretty standard thigh pocket on each side, zippered. It does have a pleat in it to give you some additional space when you actually stuff things in that pocket. You got your pretty standard front pockets that aren't zippered, and then you have two rear zipper pockets. Again, it's a mixture of kind of the ripstop as well as that soft shell material, the same quiet material as you got on the jacket. And in addition, what you have on the pants, similar to the jacket, you got some venting. So on the pants, the venting goes from the hip down to just above the knee. And it's not just straight through, it has basically a mesh. The nice thing that I found with that is Unlike some pants you might see that have, maybe a zipper that goes from the bottom to like the knee, if I'm wearing hip boots or if I'm wearing knee-high boots, I'm going through water, I got the boots on the outside of the pants, then I'm still able to take advantage of that extra venting. Especially if I'm trying to walk into an area fast, maybe running behind schedule, I can leave those zips open and then just kind of cover ground a little bit quicker without worrying about overheating as much. And even like on a scouting trip where I might be going 8-10 miles over the course of a day, I can definitely tell if I have those things zipped up when I start the day and I'm starting to get a little warm, I'll open up those zips and just immediately you can feel the difference. The pants also do have just this little additional flap of material that rises up above the waist on the back. And just like with the jackets, you got that fleece interior. And so where I use these pants is essentially all the time, with the exception of when it's really hot out, like if I'm scouting in the summer. Turkey hunting, I don't wear these. But basically anything deer related, if it's spring scouting, I'm wearing these pants. If it's deer hunting in the opening of the season in September, or if it's deer hunting in the beginning of January, the very end of the season, I have these as some kind of component, and I have had them since I basically have owned them. And they're still holding up really well. For the amount of abuse that I put these pants through, I gotta say they are definitely, kind of passing my test in terms of durability. I will note too that they do have a lifetime warranty against manufacturing defects. Now let's talk about the Mad Trapper vest. So this vest is actually a pretty interesting piece. It's a heavier weight than the Phantom soft shell jacket is. I think it's a 400 gram total, and the fleece backer in here is a little bit loftier than what you have on that Phantom jacket as well. So overall, it is a heavier, warmer type of fabric than the jacket is. This one does have a little bit more noise to it. Whereas these soft shells are really quiet, this one does have a little bit more noise, but again, it's not an amount of noise that I would really consider to be detrimental in the woods. With the jacket, you got 2 zippered side pockets, 1 zippered chest pocket that's fleece lined. These pockets are fleece lined too. And this thing, again, is totally windproof. And I've tested it again wearing long sleeve cotton in cold weather, scouting in the spring when you just got winds howling, and you can feel the wind just ripping against your arms, but the chest still stays wind free. And notice too, the length of the vest, they intentionally make it really long to help prevent you getting that little separation between your pants and your upper body when you go to bend over. So that's a nice feature that they kind of have built in. It is more of an athletic fit, so keep that in mind. I'm basically a size large, this one fits me well, and I'm basically a size large across the board with all their stuff at about 6 foot, 190 pounds for reference. And then we have the Tailwind Puffy Jacket. So this is a packable, lightweight, but very lofty insulation. It's 100% synthetic, so as opposed to something like down, a high fill power down is generally gonna be your best warmth to weight. It's gonna have your most loft. And I'm talking again, expensive down, not the cheap 500 or 600 fill duck down. But when you look at your synthetics, you have a range of different synthetic insulations, and they're also rated in terms of kind of their warmth to weight ratio. And usually the highest one that you'll see, compared to like, there's, Apex, there's different grades of Primaloft, there's Thinsulate. The Primaloft Gold at 0.92 is the highest that I've seen, unless there's something new that's out that I'm not aware of. It's basically, top shelf synthetic insulation. It's still gonna hold that loft when it's wet as well. And just to show you guys packability, there's about the size of that jacket all packed up. And this jacket, like most puffy jackets, does have a little bit noisier shell fabric, but in comparison to other puffy jackets, it's not that bad. It's loud in comparison to some of these other garments, but I've had other puffy jackets where it's like, ooh, I would never wear that in the woods. Whereas this, I think is tolerable. It's not ideal, but again, I usually layer this underneath one of those outer layers, so it ends up working just fine. Fabric weight in the chest area is 133 grams of that Primaloft Gold, whereas in the sleeves it's 100. And a little trick when you're looking at insulations and comparing jackets, or specifically puffy jackets, and kind of an apples to apples comparison, is if you know the insulation that they use, whether it's PrimaLoft Silver or whether it's Thinsulate Featherless or whatever the case may be, if you know what that is, you can find the published clo value per fabric weight. And then if you know the fabric weight of what they use for that insulation, so like in this case 133 gram, then you can do a little bit of multiplication and figure out the total amount of insulation in that cross section. So that's a good way to kind of compare what your warmth is going to be for a particular garment. And they do make this Tailwind also in a sleeveless version that doesn't have the hood, doesn't have the sleeves, it's just a vest basically with that same 133 gram PrimaLoft Gold. And that thing at $99 is, I think that's like a steal for the quality of the insulation you're getting and the amount of insulation. Not going to be as much insulation as say like that Chamberlain down puffy that I showed in a different video, but that's got 850 fill down, and it's got a lot more of that down weight. So again, you're looking at high warmth to weight ratio and a whole bunch of down. It doesn't pack up quite as small, right? There's trade-offs one way or the other. If it was like a Western hunt, typically you got your puffy jacket tucked away in your pack and you're moving, you don't really need it, you're generating heat, but then you go sit down in glass for maybe a little bit, or maybe you just want to sit at a certain spot at the end of the day and you get those big temperature swings that start to cool down, you get a little chilled, you put the puffy jacket on. For that type of use, I wear the puffy jackets as an external layer, and I like the additional hood. For whitetails, I'm not as much of a fan of the hood because for me, whenever I have a hood on a puffy jacket, I can't hear nearly as well. So when I got this thing on in the tree stand, I just had that hood out of the way. Basically, I don't really use it. But when I get to the tree, I've usually walked in with this thing stowed away, and I've just got my base layers on, and either the Mad Trapper vest or this jacket with all the zips open. I get all settled in, I'll put the puffy jacket on, and then I put the Phantom on over top of that Tailwind puffy. And then for me, the large over the large works for this style. And then of course it's quieter than if you had that puffy jacket on the exterior. You're locking in the warmth of that puffy because you get that wind shell over the top. I personally think if you got your wind blocking layer as an external, as a shell layer over the top of your insulation, it's going to tend to perform a little bit better overall than if you had your non-windproof insulation as an external layer. And then again, when I use it like this, I can either have like a separate muff, or what I did a lot of times last season, like I mentioned, is I would just stick my hands through those pit zips and then stick them into the pockets of that puffy jacket. And I wore that system down into, I'd say mid-20s. For the most part, I could push it a little bit cooler, but typically if it got too much colder than that, I would just jump right to, bibs and a parka style jacket over the top. I did ask William too, the president of the company, how he layers personally in kind of his coldest of cold. And he mentioned that for him, it's synthetic next to skin, then the Alpaca 190, then the Mad Trapper vest, then the Tailwind puffy, and then finally that Phantom jacket as an external most layer. And for me, with those amount of layers, if I was probably 10 pounds lighter, I think this would be like a, still a pretty perfect fit. As is, this is about the point where it's, that amount of layers is maybe a little bit constricting, not too bad. But for my coldest of cold, I would probably stick with something like this on the walk-in, like I was talking about in that last video, and then put on, a big parka style jacket. But in terms of layering up to that point, this system works really well to get you through most of the season. And even just this vest, I mean, this is a really versatile piece because I can wear just this little windproof vest just to kind of cut the chill when it's still early season, and it'll work well for that, blocks that wind. But then of course you can layer down and continue to use it as a part of your system to as cold as you want to hunt. And we touched on the pants, but I didn't really talk about what I wear with it. If it's warm, I just wear the pants and that's it. If it's a little bit cooler, I'll add in a merino base layer underneath the pants. And if it gets super cold, then what I'll usually do is just jump right to wearing these things on the way in and then taking out a packed in pair of bibs and putting those on over the top. But then what I also tried last season too, in the later part of the season, I tried wearing these just real high loft fleece over top of my merino base layers. That was actually kind of nice because I was still able to utilize all the functionality of the pants. The only thing I didn't like about it was that this garment in and of itself doesn't breathe as well as I'd like. So if I had a really long ways to walk in, I would tend to overheat a little bit more quickly wearing these and these than if I just wore these and took out a packed pair of bibs and put them on over the top. But this worked, I mean, really well for actually once I was set up in the tree. Price for some of these things, the Mad Trapper vest is $109. I think that's a pretty good price for what you're getting for a nice functional windproof vest, and for how versatile it is, how you can wear it literally from early season all the way through to as cold as you want to hunt. The puffy jacket is $199. The vest version was listed at $99, like I mentioned, which I think is a really good deal. Even at $200 for the 133 grams of Primaloft Gold, when you compare that to other, kind of high-end hunting offerings, it's a pretty good value still. Because a lot of other companies are using, either Thin Slit Featherless 600 or Primaloft Silver or something that's not quite as top shelf, or they're using less insulation, like maybe 80 grams in their packable vest or packable jacket, so you're not getting quite that same level of warmth. For an all synthetic, I haven't seen too much better than this in terms of warmth and still being, pretty comparable price for that type of a garment. The Phantom set, $150 for the pants, $150 for the jacket. Like I mentioned, the pants especially are extremely versatile. I've gotten just tons and tons and tons of use out of them, so I definitely feel like, again, good value for what you're paying, especially when you compare it to other high-end, hunting brands that have similar soft shell type offerings. And that hip vent, I feel, is really useful and actually functional. And then I'm pretty sure I saw this Alpaca 190 on their website for right around 60 bucks, which is a pretty good price for what it is. I do know that they have some other base layers on there that are kind of your more typical, like the $60 to $90 range or thereabouts. And then they also have a few other synthetic lighter layers. They have some merino, like face masks and neck gaiters and things like that. And so the last thing we'll touch on here is camo pattern. I tend to think that 9 times out of 10, it's movement that's gonna get you busted more so than a good or a bad camo pattern. But that said, for the type of terrain that I hunt in, especially once the leaves drop, I feel like this open pattern with kind of the grays and the really light kind of cream colors and the browns, it does blend in pretty well, especially, once most of the leaves drop around me, we still have trees like oaks that'll retain their leaves a little bit longer. And if you get tucked up into a tree like that and you're within the branches, but yet you still, can see pockets of sky through the tree, this pattern, it matches it like extremely well. I took a picture also just from the ground and made it in black and white early season, just to kind of show again how that macro pattern helps break you up a little bit more. I'm a fan of macro patterns for whitetails. Again, I think movement is the key, know when to move, when not to move, but I like macro patterns. And I also saw some hints on like the social media and stuff like that, that they're working on some other variants of this camo pattern to offer some more greens and things like that for early season or guys down south. So again, I hope this video review is helpful. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments down below, and thanks for watching.